Have you ever struggled to connect your faith and work? Maybe you've asked yourself, how is my current work, my 9-to-5 job relevant to my faith at all? That's an important question. After all, we spend on average about 90,000 hours of our waking time, which is about a third of our lives working. So in this video, I'll talk about one of the most foundational ways you can connect your faith and work. So let's get started. Hi, it's Paul Sohn, and in this channel, I provide insights, tools, and encouragement to help you clarify your unique calling. Today, I want to talk about why is it so hard to connect our faith and work. Let me just cut to the chase. I believe that the major disconnect actually stems from our lack of understanding of the whole story of the Bible. You may be asking, what do you mean, Paul, by the whole story of the Bible? I think most people think about the biblical storyline from sin and salvation. The fact that God has saved us from our own sinfulness, and through our faith in Jesus Christ, that we have everlasting life. This is amazingly good news, but this is not the whole story of the Bible. It's actually just the half story. The whole story of the Bible actually has 4 sections. I call it the 4-act story. You have creation, fall, redemption, and restoration. But why is it important to know the whole story of the Bible? Because unless we really understand the whole story of the Bible, we cannot find how we fit under this whole story. And unless we know how we fit under this whole story, it becomes very challenging for us to connect our faith and work. In fact, the difference between believing the half story versus the whole story is the difference between spending your work days counting down the minutes, just going through the motions at work, versus engaging your career with excitement and a profound sense of meaning. So if you want to experience a better life, where your career is just filled with a profound sense of meaning, let me just share with you 3 specific ways of how knowing the full story, the 4-act story, connects your faith and work. First, the 4-act story reminds that you have a purpose in life. The 4-act story doesn't start with the fall, it starts with creation. This means that we are first and foremost made in the image of God. And as His image bearer, we are given a grand mission. That is to cultivate and take care of His creation for His glory. Remember in Genesis 1:28 where God says, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it." Nancy Pearcey says that be fruitful and multiply means to develop the social world. That is to build families, churches, schools, cities, governments, laws. And the second phrase, subdue the earth, means to harness the natural world. It's to plant crops, it's to build bridges, it's to design computers and compose music. If you think about it, this is actually our first job description, and it was not only just given to Adam and Eve, but for us as well. So whether you are an entrepreneur, you're an engineer, or you're a healthcare professional, your work is not just a means to an end. It's not just a pathway to find your self-worth, but rather work is your divine calling, is where you get to serve the needs of the world and glorify God. Second, the 4-act story informs you that you are in full-time ministry. Now, some of you may be thinking, if I want to do God's work, I need to either be a full-time pastor or missionary. And what you're implying here is that all other work outside of those elements actually are secular. It's part-time ministry. And that is simply untrue. In your mind, you've created maybe the secular and sacred divide. And this is what happens if you don't believe the full storyline of the Bible. Under the sin and salvation story, success only becomes about how many people you convert to Christ. That is, of course, an important thing, but it is not the whole thing. The 4-act story, on the other hand, recognizes that all of life and work is sacred. I love what Abraham Kuyper said, that there's not 1 square inch in this world that Christ does not say mine. Do you work with excellence? Because God does care about your work, not just church work, but He wants to use you in the arena that He's called you to serve the needs of the world and to really glorify God. And my favorite example is William Wilberforce. You might have heard of him. He's the guy who led the abolition of the slave trade in Britain. And early in his career, Wilberforce was faced with a decision to either become a full-time minister or pursue his political career. I'm grateful that he chose the latter, because I wonder, what if he had chosen to be a pastor or a missionary? No doubt that he would have made an impact, but history would have changed, as there would have been no man, no Wilberforce to lead the abolition of slavery in Great Britain. And we may not achieve anything maybe as significant as the abolition of the slave trade, but we can know that God is still at work through us in our day-to-day work as well. Third, the 4-act story actually helps you to see your work with eternal significance. The 4-act story becomes more than just getting into heaven. It's not just a ticket to heaven, but that's not just how the story ends. Because if that were the case, none of our work would actually matter. In fact, the Bible says that there will be restoration. The book of Revelation describes it as a new heaven and a new earth. It's a physical place where they're full of gardens, trees, cities, music, and architecture. So restoration is not about God just throwing this world into some trash and starting over. It's about God refining all things, which includes our work as well. So imagine where you go to work and there's no more ungodly motives. There's no more corruption, no more greed or backstabbing. Our work will actually be free of frustration. Can you actually believe that? How awesome would that be, right? We will actually delight in our assigned work in God's beautiful city. So you may be wondering, what does the end of the story actually have to do with my present work right now? Well, the end of the story should inform your work week, that our work today on this earth will be difficult because of the effects of sin. But our work today will have actually a significant impact, an eternal significance actually, when Jesus will reign and make all things new. So when you understand the whole storyline of the Bible, you will actually find yourself part of this amazing grand story that God is writing. The fact is, God has prepared you for such a time as this, that you and I have a greater motivation to wake up Monday morning for work because your work matters to God. It gives you a purpose in life, that you get to realize that you are actually in full-time ministry, that your audience is in the workplace, and you see your work with eternal significance. So if you want to learn more about the 4X storyline, I just barely scratched the surface. Actually, I have a link in the description box here that you could read and really learn more about the whole storyline of the Bible. So definitely check that out. Maybe you've never thought intentionally about the whole storyline of the Bible, but share your thoughts in the comment box below about how did you process what I just shared with you. Maybe you believed in the sin versus salvation model, or maybe you have believed in the 4-act story, or maybe you have not even thought about it at all. So again, I encourage you to think about this intentionally, so the next time you actually go and read the Bible, that you will actually see the beautiful tapestry that God is creating and this beautiful story that He's writing. The fact is, you and I, we get to be part of this amazing story. Until next time, listen to His call.